institutions of the state? Yes, that is a very good question, because I forgot to include them. This was a serious error when I did not include the Ministry of Federal Planning of the national government. We have a colleague that has been working for 10 years on land use, and this is a work that has increased recently, both in financial resources as well as on training and capacity building in municipalities and provinces. So this is on the secretary who's here. I would like to apologize for not having mentioned you and mentioned this topic, but clearly all of the areas are involved. The Ministry of Culture as well. What they have is agricultural emergency programs, and they intervene with small and large-scale farmers in our country when we have floods, for example, or some drought, which is affecting maybe one of the reasons. And then the Ministry of Agriculture has emergency plans. I simply want to mention just one issue, and it has to do with the human resource. I would like, if I may, to acknowledge that last February there was a fire in a paper depot. It was a very big fire in an area where there was only paper, and 9 firefighters died of the volunteers and of the fire department of our country. And here what I would like to acknowledge is that they were highly professional. In fact, a gentleman with a lot of experience and authority died. He also helped us tackle some of the adverse events that we have had to face in my country. But the building was old, and a wall collapsed, and right there and then killed 9 firefighters. So I would like to acknowledge their sacrifice, and I would also like to acknowledge all of us who are here, because without the human resource, without this discussion, without capacity building, without the will, it is impossible for all of these topics that we are discussing. And the authorities from the government, from the UN involved. Without all of us, risk management and help or assistance to the most vulnerable would be impossible. Finishing with this, I had mentioned that in 2013, as a member of the UN and the UNDAC team, I had responded to the emergency. 10 years later, and that is why acknowledging the cross-sectional connection, 10 years later, with accumulated experience, with capacity and vocation, there is acknowledgement by our government for someone with a profile of emergency experience, disaster experience, risk reduction, can have a position at the highest level of the government. And this is something that we have needed for some time, to render these issues visible, and that there will be people with experience on this in the government. This is happening in our country, and we are extremely proud. Thank you, Minister. Regarding that, I'm not inviting an answer. Natural disaster. But maybe to state that not because a lot is done, everything has been done. And this is a criticism to what you were mentioning of the emergency in Santa Fe, because someone in the auditorium talked about the floods of Mar del Plata in 2013, where many people died. I think it is better. Can I say something? Yes, very briefly, please. Yes, it was in La Plata. It was an unexpected flood that led to a collapse. It was a different city, not Santa Fe, and the response system of the civil defense collapsed. That's true. Every day of our management, we regret this and we think of those people. But it is true. Santa Fe was it got better, but then in this place it was a lot of water very fast, and many people died immediately, especially elderly people. There are many questions. We will not be able to read them all, as the minister says. We will need all day long to do so, and I am going to give the floor to you, Margarita, Dr. Margarita, because there are two questions for you. And one of them is that there is someone who's asking if there should be fines, penalties, so that this doesn't happen again, because it has been mentioned that year after year, with natural phenomenon, even not the unexpected but the expected, we see numbers of victims which of course are not satisfactory. And the other question is if the issue of education to prevent risk is truly being dealt with, if teachers know where tectonic plates are, if it is included in the syllabus of students from when they are very young, what they need to know to be able to react to a disaster. Now that is it, because there's another 15 and we won't have time to answer them.
Thank you. I will do it in English. On your first very important question, should there be punishments for I think omissions and for not doing what one is actually supposed to be accountable for doing. You know, in many countries, and this actually goes also to the transversibilidad, there are already, if you think about environmental legislation, in many local governments, if a local government does not take precautionary measures, something happens. We increasingly see that the public or an individual can take action on a legal basis. So I think, you know, I don't think where we are in the process now that anyone I can see extreme cases, but to say yes, there should be punishments require a lot more than stating there should be punishments. Because if you look into the legislation that countries have, you will see, and this is of course the theme that is coming up again and again, including from the disaster managers themselves, saying our institutions are not yet well designed enough so that I know what I'm accountable for and what somebody else is accountable for. This is the risk governance discussion that is going on in every region in the world, is that the responsibilities all too often are too distributed for even those who wish to be accountable to have the instruments to do it. So I think the question, give it another cycle of establishing a much clearer understanding of risk governance at national level, and look at how it fits with other legislation, and I think you will see that the stars are coming together and accountabilities will be much better followed through. On the education, I would say that most of, I would like to say this here, that if I ask an audience, if there is only one thing you can recommend we need to do more of, it's education that comes up. And it's education formally, education informally. So no, I don't think, speaking in generalities, not the way speaks, I don't think teachers are very well equipped to look into the depth of risk. But this is not one teacher's responsibility, it's our responsibility to ensure that risk goes into lots of subjects in the education system, into geography, physical sciences, sociology, history of countries. When you know your disasters, you learn from them. So I don't think there is a very straightforward answer. Also, in most countries of the world, still at university level, engineers are leaving their engineering degree without having discussed risk. Agronomists, water managers, social scientists, risk management is missing in all this education. So public awareness education, but the mainstreaming of risk into the education system, I know what they say. They say, oh, it's so difficult, it costs money, and you know, they are protecting. But I can see it is entering into the consciousness, and now we've taken help by the science community, the academics, and say, please do this work at your level of the system. So I think where there have been successes is to integrate in school self-protection measures, emergency measures. Just like you were mentioning, many children and teachers know how to protect themselves in a situation of crisis. But risk as a theme for managing future climate risk, disaster risk, environmental risk, not quite well there as a well-integrated topic.
Gracias. Bueno, muchas gracias a todos los que...
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all of the participants, and I do apologize because many questions have been left without answers, but you have taken many notes. I think maybe you could give us some conclusions of what has been stated by the ministers and what is our future, basically. Which direction are we going into? I would like to thank the members of the panel. And I have two thoughts. Number one is that some countries have been for 20 years, 10, 8, 9 years working on this issue. And I take note that awareness is trickling into the government, and the governments are assuming responsibility for this risk in the different ministries. It has also been noted that there are still internal coordination challenges that we face, and which, having a policy, it is not clear that things will change immediately. Work is needed. That also depends on the inclusion of different parts of society to be able to carry it out. I would like to say that I consider this as very important progress. Now, something else is that I don't know if it is possible for just one minister or ministry to carry out a change in awareness of the whole government. And I ask myself, which are the most important criteria that allow us to make this an interministerial process, which is important, because I believe that our experience shows that a lot of responsibility is loaded on just one ministry or the civil defense, and that they are in charge of promoting, pushing, leading in a situation that is not so easy. And so I think that we have this work remaining, which is how to analyze this fully as a government, and you as expert ministers could initiate a change in policy, building awareness. But I believe that we and all of the society needs to support you. This is a conclusion because individually there is a lot of awareness and important work has been done. But now I feel that there's still a lot more to be done, that we have the responsibility, all of us, to do it, because we still discuss a lot the situation of crisis and disaster, and our goal is to avoid that crisis, that disaster, and so that work, which is a midterm, long-term work, is the work that we want to move forward today in this session. Very well, so we're going to give you some more notes on the topics that have been discussed here, and all of these questions, because there were lots of questions, and I think that is indicative of the fact that we do need this dialogue with ministers and all of the participants. So hopefully we will be able to continue this dialogue in a very fluid manner and future meetings. but also for this dialogue to also continue in your countries and other areas of the region. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you very much. Coordination and making changes in the Constitution more agile. I think these are the pending tasks. I would like to thank Maria Cecilia Rodriguez, Minister of Security of Argentina, Mr. Lisandro Rosales of Social Inclusion of Honduras, Minister Augusto Espinosa of Education in Ecuador, Minister from Jamaica, Noel Ashcott, and Minister of Economy and Finance of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for joining us, and I would like to thank also the participants and wish you a very good afternoon.